Richard is a successful playwright, on the verge of great success, when his life takes an unexpected turn. He returns to his hometown to meet his loving aunt who has always supported him. She prepares an evening for him, attended by his friends and admirers. At this evening, he meets a woman, elderly and mysterious, who approaches him and hands him a pocket watch while uttering the cryptic words, "Come back to me." These words sink into his soul, and he cannot forget them. Time passes, and Richard feels lost. His plays are no longer of interest, he can't find inspiration, and his personal life is becoming more and more empty. Constantly he remembers that moment of meeting a woman who left a lasting impression on him. Richard begins to research the history of his town and learns that for many years there have been performances featuring an actress named Elisa McKenna. He realizes that this is exactly the woman he met at the party. Eliza was a popular actress in the early 20th century, but no one has remembered her since. Richard decides that his only chance of reclaiming his life and creativity is to return to the time period when Elisa was alive. He begins to actively research the theory of time travel. In his search for information on how to travel back in time, Richard stumbles upon a book by a professor who claims that it is possible to travel back in time if you focus deeply on your desire and environment. The professor shares with him the knowledge of how emotions and thoughts can affect one's perception of time. Richard decides he must experience this for himself. He begins to carefully prepare for his journey. He removes all modern things from his surroundings and surrounds himself with items that could belong to the early 20th century. He even dresses in old-fashioned clothes, trying to create an atmosphere of the past. Every night he immerses himself in memories of the time when Elisa lived. He studies photographs, reads about her performances, listens to music from that time, trying to recreate the atmosphere so that his mind can go back in time. Finally, one night while concentrating on Elisa's portrait, Richard manages to travel back in time. He opens his eyes and realizes that he is in a hotel on Mackinac Island in the year 1912. At first he is puzzled, not believing that this is really happening. He is surrounded by beautiful nature, dressed up people in the clothes of the time. He realizes he has to find Elisa. His heart races with excitement as he starts looking for her in the hotel. When he finds her, she looks exactly as he imagined. Eliza is acting in a theater and she is full of life and charm. Richard feels joy when he sees her, but also fear. He lacks the courage to approach and speak. Eliza is surrounded by people, including her manager, the strict and overbearing William Fowler, who is clearly in control of her life and career. Richard finds an opportunity to approach her and starts a conversation. He tells her that he has come from another time and has come to meet her. Elisa doesn't believe him at first, but soon senses that he is sincere. They begin to spend time together. Every moment they spend together fills their hearts with joy. Richard explains to her that she has become an inspiration to him and their connection grows deeper. Elisa begins to open up to him, sharing her dreams and fears, and they both realize that a strong attraction has developed between them. However, William, her manager, notices their closeness and begins to interfere. He does not want Elisa to be distracted from her career. William is constantly on guard and his resentment grows. Despite this, Richard and Eliza find opportunities to meet. They walk around the island, swapping stories about their lives. Elisa shares her dreams for the future, and Richard inspires her by talking about how she could become even more famous if she took a chance. Richard feels his love for her growing every day, and he does everything he can to prove to Eliza that she deserves happiness. However, dark clouds begin to gather over their relationship. William decides that action must be taken and begins to set up situations to make Richard look incompetent and dangerous. He tells Elisa that Richard is manipulating her and wants to use her for his own ends. Eliza begins to doubt Richard's feelings and whether they can be together. One day when Richard is getting ready for a romantic date with Eliza, he finds a coin in the pocket of his modern belongings. At the sight of it, he feels his surroundings begin to blur. Richard panics and tries to hold on to his thoughts of the past, but it all happens too quickly. He is brought back to the present time and realizes that he has lost Eliza. Finding himself in the modern world, Richard can't come to terms with his loss. He tries to figure out how he can get back to her. He keeps replaying memories of her in his head, revisiting the photos he still has, and feels his love for her continue to torment him. Richard seeks out the professor again, who explains to him that a return is possible if he can really focus on his feelings. Richard decides that he can no longer stay in the present. He tries again to go back in time. Each time he becomes more desperate and his attempts to return more intense. He surrounds himself again with things from the year 1912, trying to create the same atmosphere. But his efforts are in vain, and he cannot find a way to get back to Eliza again. Despite his despair, Richard does not give up. He once again immerses himself in the memories of his feelings for Elise and the time they spent together. He begins to realize that his love for her was stronger than he could have imagined and that it was she who made his life complete. Richard's inner turmoil becomes more and more intense and he decides that he cannot accept life without her. Once again he tries to travel back in time, and this time he does return. He finds himself back in the year 1912, and his heart is filled with hope. He finds Eliza, and they are reunited again. Eliza is filled with happiness at seeing him. Richard assures her that they can be together despite all the obstacles. He tells her that he will never let her go and that she is what makes his life meaningful, but their happiness is short-lived. William sees them together and decides to act again. He tries to convince Eliza that Richard is just an illusion and that her future and career are in jeopardy. Eliza, torn between her love for Richard and her responsibilities to her manager, begins to waver again. Her inner turmoil becomes increasingly agonizing and she doesn't know what to do. When Richard realizes that William is once again interfering in their relationship, he tries everything he can to prove his loyalty to Eliza. He arranges a romantic date for her where they can only be with each other, and in that moment they both realize that their love is stronger than any barriers. They agree to meet again, but William has other plans. He sets up a situation to separate them. Richard tries to find a way to see Eliza, but encounters obstacles and this causes him great despair. He feels that there is more than just a man standing in his way, and his attempts to prove his love become increasingly dramatic. In the finale, Richard realizes that his love for Elisa was genuine and real, and he is willing to do anything to be with her, even if it costs him his life. He decides that he will not give up, and as he relives their moments of happiness over and over again, he finds the strength to stand up to William and all other obstacles. Each time he becomes more determined and more focused on his feelings. Richard and Elisa find themselves together again, and although they face challenges, they are willing to overcome them for the sake of their love. Their stories continue and they are forever in each other's hearts, even as the world around them changes. Richard realizes that true love really can overcome any temporary obstacle, and that is the meaning of their incredible journey.